Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Hello everyone. Today I'll discuss the Dilmun coast and its role in the peaceful maritime spread of Islam from the 7th to the 13th century CE. This topic is important because it shows that Islam expanded not only through conquest but also through trade, diplomacy, and ethical economic interaction, especially in coastal societies. Definitely. So, Dilmun emerged around 3000 BCE as a major maritime civilization centered in present day Bahrain and Eastern Arabia. Okay. It functioned as a uh, key trading hub linking Mesopotamia, Oman, and the Indus Valley. Dilmun's strength was not military dominance, but its role as a commercial intermediary. Because of this, it developed a port culture based on openness, trust, and cross cultural exchange. So, even after Dilmun's political decline around the first millennium BCE, its ports and sea routes remained active. This is crucial because Islam later entered a region that already had strong maritime infrastructure and long distance trade networks. So, these networks became channels not only for goods but also for ideas and beliefs as well, which actually helped Islam to spread a lot easily. So, before Islam, the Dilmun region, known as Al Bahrain, was religiously diverse, hosting Zoroastrians, Christians, Jews, and local Arabian beliefs. Port societies prioritized economic cooperation over religious exclusivity. This environment made the region highly receptive to peaceful Islamic integration rather than violent resistance. So, Islam arrived in the Dilmun region peacefully in 628 CE. The Prophet Muhammad sent his envoy Al ibn al Hadrami to the ruler Al Mundir ibn Sawa, who accepted Islam without military conflict. So, this peaceful conversion allowed Islam to merge with existing governance and trade systems rather than replacing them. So, following this, Dilmun became an early Islamic maritime hub. So, uh, from the 7th to the 13th century, Islam spread through the region mainly via trade and settlement, not conquest. Merchants and sailors became the primary agents of religious transmission. Islamic ethical principles, honesty in trade. Islamic ethical principles were honesty in trade, contracts, and charity. Built trust with non-Muslims and encouraged gradual voluntary conversion. Actually, these things helped a lot to convert the non-Muslims into Muslims. So, through these maritime networks, Islam spread to several interconnected regions. So, Eastern Arabia, including Bahrain and Al Hassa, became one of the earliest Islamic centers outside the Hijaz. So, its strong administrative integration was an advantage, but its openness also made it vulnerable to later ideological movements such as uh, Quarmisians, showing that connectivity could enable both stability and disruption. Okay, so across the Persian Gulf. So Islam spread to Oman and southern Persia mainly through merchant sailors. So this allowed Islam to adapt culturally, but it also produced uneven Islamization with coastal areas converting earlier than inland regions. Then Yemen and Southern Arabia absorbed Islam through reinforced maritime links. Actually, there were existing monotheistic traditions which eased conversion, but political fragmentation continued, demonstrating that religious unity did not always ensure political stability. And further east, we can see that Dilmun linked trade carried Islam to the western coast of India, particularly Gujarat, Konkan, and Malabar. So here Islam spread peacefully through trade settlements and intermarriage. So we can see intermarriage here, and these created long-lasting Muslim communities through their dependence on maritime trade and made them economically vulnerable on the trading. Similarly, in East Africa, especially Somalia and the Swahili coast, Islam developed as an urban mercantile religion connected to ports, and these societies were culturally resilient but economically exposed to later disruptions, including colonialism. So actually now comparing the early Islamic period with the modern era, we can see that in the early period, Islam in the Dilmun connected world functioned as a flexible network-based system. But religious authority was embedded in everyday life, trade, social ethics, and community trust. And this allowed Islam to adapt across cultures with minimal resistance. However, limited communication and weak central control sometimes led to sectarian divisions, which is quite normal, because if control is on central and the region is very huge, then definitely there can be sectarian divisions as well. There was an issue. So in the modern era, Islam in these regions in is institu- uh, institutionalized and state managed. So modern education, law, and global communication provide structure and continuity. However, Islam is now often politicized, influenced by nationalism and geopolitics. So sectarian tensions are more visible, and oil-based economics have reduced the older dependencies created by trade. These are actual facts that we are seeing right now in modern regions of Dilmun, like the Oman, then the Syria, Libya, the Middle East countries, then the Mesopotamia, which is Iran. So these issues are actually growing very fast. But if we think about the earliest Dilmun maritime, then they were actually dependent, uh, th- uh, independent on tradings. So critically, early maritime Islam thrived on economic cooperation and social trust. That's what I was trying to say. So while modern Islam, modern Islam often operates under political pressure and identity conflict, the shift from merchant-driven religious diffusion to state-controlled religion marks a fundamental transformation in how Islam functions in society. So, in conclusion, Dilmun's importance lies not in religious authority but in being a connector of regions. So its ports allowed Islam to spread as a lived, ethical system embedded in trade and daily interaction. So this history reminds us that Islam's global expansion was shaped as much as by networks and cooperation as by request, as by cooperation as by conquest. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Julkarnain, and I'm going to talk about how Islam spread in Gujarat, the roles of Sufi and their order, Shia and the Sunni communities in spreading Islam in Gujarat, the modern day violence that occurs in India based on the religious difference, and how Gujarat has set an example that religious diversity can be a source of stability rather than a diversion. Gujarat is one of the important states of India that contains port through which it exports a large amount of textile spices to more than 100 countries. And it also handles 40% of the shipment of agro product and manufactured goods of India. Now, if you look at Gujarat's current success, it can be traced back to its early established of ports like the Bharuk, Kabat, and Surat. These ports were also the main reason why Middle East traders came to the subcontinent because it directly faced the Arabian Seas. Favorable monsoon winds also made it easy for the Middle East traders to come here. The Muslim traders settled here because there was no aggression towards them. They actually had privileges in the Gujarat. So they settled here, and through the trade, commerce, and non-aggressive activities, they spread Islam in the subcontinent. Alongside trade, Sufi and the orders played a major role in spreading Islam with a peaceful way of understanding tolerance and evolving the preaching around the people of Gujarat and its culture. Now, saints like Khaja Moinuddin Chishti, Malik Muhammad Zahan, and Surawardi and the Qadiri orders were also important in spreading Islam. They evolved their preaching of Islam by using different cultures like qawwalis, poetry, music. They performed charitable works like langar, khanas, where they gave free food to the poor people, khankas, and mediated any kind of conflict that occurred during the around them. Now, when one tries to share his ideas, communication is the core fundament to reach out to the people of the new culture. Now, the Sufi and their orders have performed very excellently in this term because they never force their ideals and never ask for any forceful donations. They never performed any military conquest. Rather, they did a charitable work willingly. And the people of Gujarat actually accepted them. They willingly came and consolidated, supported the Muslim traders and the Sufis. The establishment of Gujarat Sultanate was also an important event by which Islam was widespread in the subcontinent. The Sunni community, who controlled the most of the trade networks, established backed Zafar Khan, who established Gujarat Sultanate during that time. While Shia community was small in number, Shia communities like Bohra and Khoja, they established the long distance commerce route with the Persian Gulf and the Central Asia. Now, these two communities may have some different religious beliefs, but their collaboration in Gujarat made a very important role to not only help to create a peaceful community for the minor groups like the Hindus and the Jains, but also many made Islam more popular. The government did not impose any unjust law on the minor communities. The sharias were only imposed on the Muslims. Now, the non-Muslims like the Hindu and Jains participated in trades by paying their jizya non-Muslim taxes. And local governance, there are no issues. Moreover, Hindu merchants were willingly patrons for the building of mosques and the khankas and the Sufi mosques. Although we see a history of a communal peace in Gujarat in the 7th century, at present times the pictures are quite different. The infamous Gujarat riot in the 2002 took place over disputable cause of a train accident that killed Hindus. This issue is still even discussed and not accurately pinpointed that whether it was a pre-planned attack or an accident. Now, after the Hindus died, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad called for a right-wing Indian non-governmental Hindu Parishad, the right-wing non-governmental organization, called for a nationwide strike, and in the aftermath, nearly 1,000 of innocent people died. Many were injured and victims of many crimes. The Mumbai riot was also based on the political religious violence. The BJP and the RSS destroyed the Babri Masjid, claiming that their God's temple, Ram's temple, was there. It was destroyed, and Babri Masjid was created. This instigated another major violent incident, which we also known as the 1993 Bombay serial bombing. This was executed by a terrorist group called the D Company. whose leader was Dawood Ibrahim, the infamous Dawood Ibrahim, and it caused deaths to many innocent peoples. And it was some sort of like a message to the Hindu communities. They were taking revenge for attacking the Muslim community. Although there is bad blood between the Hindu and Muslim community in Gujarat, the Muslim community still carries humanitarian acts instead of holding any personal grudges. Many Dargah Sharif, like the Azmir Dargah Sharif, still performs the Langar Khana. They gave free food to the poor peoples. And during the COVID-19 situation, many Muslim communities like the Dawoodi Bohra community, Shia community, performed charitable work. They gave free foods, medicines, economical support to the people who lost their jobs during COVID-19, who were poor, who were the weak, elderly people. The Sunni organizations like Jamaat Ulama-e-Hind and Shia sects like Bohra and Khoja run several schools, free clinics, water systems, educational facilities, hospitals like the Saifi Hospital. A country like India, which is home to many different communities and people of culture, needs to adapt the culture of communal peace and understanding for their social stability and democratic governance. Gujarat has set a perfect example. It has shown us that multicultural communities can live peacefully and respectfully. But in modern times, religion is often used as a weapon of destruction and destroying the social tranquility. In this matter of Gujarat's history, even back then and even today, shows us that even in the cultural and religious diversity, multiple communities can create a strong bond by proper communication and share social responsibilities together. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Mohammad Rahman, and today I will be talking about the region, the Red Sea. So, the Red Sea is one of the most important and strategic waterways in the world. It links the Mediterranean Sea through the Suez Canal with the Indian Ocean. So around 12% of global trade passes through this corridor annually, and the Suez Canal reduces the shipping distance between the Europe and the Asia by nearly 7,000 kilometers. So because of this importance, the global superpowers like United States and China and Gulf states, they maintain a military bases along the Red Sea. So countries like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen and Sudan, all these countries, they are deeply interconnected by both strategic interests and shared Islamic history. So understanding how the Islam actually historically shaped this region will help us understand how, its cultural memory and present day conflicts. So if I'm going to move on to the next part, which is where I will discuss about how it was, how the Red Sea was before the Islam arrived there. So the before Islam, between 300 BCE and 700 BCE, the Red Sea was already a thriving commercial zone. So ports such as Berenike and Kuana and Aidha, they connected Rome and South Arabia and India and East Africa. They connected each other, and the main thing was that they used to trade incenses and textiles and spices, as well as precious metals. So religiously, the region was very pluralistic. So polytheism, Judaism, and Christianity, they used to coexist all together. The Hawk cave inscriptions in Socotra, written in Greek, Aramaic, and South Arabian, and Ethiopic, and Indic languages, they show that how merchants organized trade across ethnic and religious boundaries. So these pre-Islamic diversity later shaped how Islam was received peacefully rather than violently in many coastal regions. So after the arrival of Islam, when Islam arrived in the 7th century, it transformed the Red Sea from a peripheral zone into a central Islamic corridor. So key events include the conquest of Egypt, and the political unification of the Hijaz. So under the Umayyad dynasty, an early Islamic Mare Nostrum or shared sea was deliberately created by revitalizing ports and maritime routes. So ports like Jeddah and Ayla and Al Khalzam became centers of trade and pilgrimage. So importantly, Islam spread largely through merchants and not armies. So Muslim communities appeared along the East African coast by the mid 7th century, so highlighting the peaceful maritime diffusion of religion. So as we have talked about that, and I have said that trade routes worked as vehicles for Islam. So between 8th and the 13th centuries, the Red Sea functioned as a religious and legal and economic highway. So merchants did not only transport goods, they carried Islamic ethics and legal practices and commercial norms, and research follows that proximity to history trade routes strongly predicts modern Muslim populations, so which emphasizes on a trader's role in religious diffusion. So Islamic principles such as zakat and fair contracts and Sharia-based dispute resolution made Muslim merchants reliable partners. The first hijrah to Abyssinia in 1650 CE further cemented long-term Muslim-African relationships, proving the Red Sea's foundational role in Islamic global history. So moving on, we have the economic and cultural transformation due to Red Sea. So Islam reshaped the Red Sea economy through institutions that encouraged trust and welfare, and elite merchants networks like the Karimis, who controlled Mediterranean, Red Sea, Indian Ocean trade, accumulated wealth ranging from 100,000 to like 10 million dinars. So Islamic commercial tools such as hawala and suftaza enabled long distance trade without physical money, while riba prohibition promoted ethical finance. So Arabic became the commercial lingua franca, and port cities emerged as cosmopolitan spaces where Muslims and Christians and Jews they used to coexist all together. So they were prioritizing commerce over sectarianism. So then we have a Sharia law, okay, and the governance. So Sharia played a stabilizing role in Red Sea societies by balancing religious law and political authority and local customs. So Qadi courts applied jurisprudence according to religious regional schools, Shafi'i Yemen and Maliki in North Africa, and Hanafi in Ottoman Empire. So while Mazalim courts handled executive matters. So in commerce, Sharia standardized contracts and partnerships like Mudaraba and Mushraka. Courts even accepted multilingual contracts with and non-Muslim testimony, which shows the legal inclusivity. So historically, Sharia enabled governance through justice and predictability, and not coercion. So then we can talk about Sufism and the peaceful expansion. So Sufism was perhaps the most influential force in spreading Islam along the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. And from the 9th century onward, Sufi orders emphasized spirituality, ethics, and social justice rather than political dominance. We can talk about also Shia-Sunni coexistence and the modern day breakout, if I'm going to talk about that. So historically, the Red Sea region, especially the Yemen, demonstrated Sunni-Shia coexisted. So Zaidi Shia imamate, they ruled the northern Yemen from 1897 to 1962, maintaining a peaceful relationship with Shafi'i Sunnis due to theological moderation. But now, if I'm going to talk about in today's world, we have seen that in the past year, in 2025, we have seen that in Sudan, people were massively murdered. The Sudan Genocide Declaration in 2025 and the Houthi attacks disrupted 90% of container traffic contradict and Islam's historical emphasis on protecting trade routes and civilian life. So in my opinion, there are three failures in this situation. That firstly, the merchant led interdependence replaced by extractive state control. Then we have external powers exporting sectarian conflicts, and then we have the loss of Sufi mediated ethical networks that once restrained violence. So that was my part of the presentation. Thank you very much.
I will be presenting the spread of Islam across the Silk Roads, focusing on Central Asia. So I will begin by explaining the geographical importance of Central Asia, then move to the spread of Islam in Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, then discuss the role of Naqshbandi Sufi order, and finally explain why this region is significant for understanding Islam as a global region. So, Central Asia was located at the heart of the Silk Road networks. These routes connected East Asia, South Asia, the Middle East, and Europe, making the region a major crossroads of trade and cultural exchange. Because of this location, Central Asia was constantly exposed to new ideas, languages, and belief systems. So, Islam spread into this region mainly through interaction and contact rather than sudden or forced conversion. Merchants, travelers, scholars, and religious teachers all played an important role for Islam to spread along the Silk Roads, though it was a gradual and social process, not only a political one. So, moving to the section of Uzbekistan, Islam entered this region during the 8th century following Arab expansion. However, Islamization did not happen overnight. Instead, it developed gradually over several generations. Under the Samanid dynasty, cities like Bukhara and Samarkand became major centers of Islamic learning and culture. The mosque and architectural images on the poster show how Islam became part of urban life. Mosques, madrasas, and Islamic law supported education, trade, and governance. So, Islam was successful in Uzbekistan because it worked with existing Persian and urban traditions instead of replacing them. Islam believed blending with local culture, which made the religion more acceptable and sustainable. So, this shows how Islam adapted to local conditions while still maintaining its core principles. Uh, Now let's see Islam in Kazakhstan. So, in contrast to urban Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan was mainly home to nomadic Turkic societies. Islam spread here more slowly between the 10th and 14th centuries. As shown in the image of the Kazakh steppe, people lived mobile lives based on pastoralism, which required different forms of religious practice. Islam spread through trade contract, intermarriage, and traveling religious figures rather than large cities or state institutions. Religious beliefs were adapted to nomadic lifestyles and were often passed down the oral traditions. So, this is important because it shows that Islam was flexible. It did not require people to abandon their way of life to become Muslim. Instead, Islamic beliefs blended with Turkic customs. This adaptability is one of the reasons that Islam was able to spread across very different societies and eventually became a universal religion. The next key section of the posters focuses on the Naqshbandi Sufi order, founded by Baha al-Din Naqshband in the 14th century in the Bukhara region. So the image of his shrine represents the spiritual influence of this order. The Naqshbandiya emphasized discipline, moral behavior, and silent remembrance of God while also encouraging followers to remain active in everyday social and economic life. This made the order specially influential among merchants, scholars, and local leaders. So, if we think critically, the Naqshbandi order functioned like a spiritual network similar to trade routes. Though through discipleship and teaching, Islamic values spread across Central Asia and beyond, including South Asia. This shows that Islam spread not only through political power but also through spiritual and social connections. Um, Finally, the section of the poster highlights the global significance of Central Asia. The Eurasian Trade Network map shows how Central Asia linked multiple regions across continents. Islam spread through interconnected Eurasian trade networks, scholarly institutions, and Sufi spiritual movements. It adapted to both urban societies like those Uzbekistan and nomadic societies like those in Kazakhstan while maintaining shared beliefs and practices. Because of this, Islam was able to connect people across ethnic, cultural, and geographic boundaries. So, Central Asia played a key role as a linking zone that helped Islam grow into a truly global region. So we can say that the spread of Islam in Central Asia demonstrates how Islam became universal through adaptation, interaction, and networks rather than force alone. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Ahmedul Haq and my part of the group presentation focuses on the Malabar coast of South India. I've already zoomed in on my part of the poster so you can see it much clearly. So the Malabar coast is important because it helps us understand how Islam spread as a global and universal religion through peaceful means rather than any conquest or political fightings. While many other regions experience political expansion, the Malabar Coast shows a different trajectory in all the ways, one shaped by trading, migration, and cultural interactions with the Indian Ocean. If you look at the map in my poster, you'll see that the Malabar Coast lies along the Arabian Sea, directly connected to Arabia, East Africa, and Southeast Asia. This region was part of the Indian Ocean Trade Network, where merchants travel regularly using seasonal monsoon winds. Because these winds were predictable, traders didn't come here only once and disappear. They came here many times and very often over many generations. This long term contact created the perfect conditions for ideas, cultures, and religions to move in peacefully in Malabar Coast. Islam entered an already cosmopolitan environment and became part of an everyday life rather than something imposed from outside. Now, if we move to the bullet points under how Islam spread, the key point is that Islam came to Malabar Coast through Arab Muslim merchants and not any armies or kings. These traders didn't just trade and leave. Many settled permanently, forming what historians depict as Arab diaspora along the coast. They learned local languages, followed local customs and traditions, and most importantly, intermarried with local communities present at the place. This process led to the formation of the Mapila Muslim community, one of the oldest Muslim communities in South Asia. Islam spread through families, neighborhoods, and trade relationships, not through any force or political power. Another important factor was commercial trust. Muslim merchants were respected for their honesty, for ethical trading practices, and access to global markets. Local rulers supported them because trade benefited the region economically. This created an environment where Islam could grow socially and organically. The Sufis played a very crucial role and for the spread of Islam in Malabar Coast. While merchants laid foundations, Sufi teachers strengthened Islam's presence at the region. Sufism emphasized spirituality, moral conduct, and personal devotion rather than rigid legal enforcement. Sufis adapted Islamic practices to local cultural traditions, which allowed Islam to coexist with Hindu and Christian communities. Instead of demanding cultural replacement, Sufis encouraged cultural accommodation. This approach made Islam accessible and meaningful to local populations and ensured that it could survive across many generations. This is a key reason as to why Islam on the Malabar coast remained stable even without any political dominance. Now, this brings me to the analysis section of the poster. The Malabar coast shows that Islam became a religion not by erasing local identities, but by working within them. Trading networks allowed Islam to travel. Arab diaspora communities ensured continuity, and Sufi adaptation made Islam culturally flexible. This challenges the idea that religions only spread through conquest. Instead, Islam expanded across continents by being socially embedded, ethically grounded, and adaptable to different cultures and communities. If you look at the historical photographs in my section, they represent the Mapila Muslim of Kerala. Today, Muslims in Kerala are a minority, but Islam remains a vibrant and deeply rooted part of the regional society. The survival of Islam here shows the long term sustainability of peaceful diffusion. Because Islam spread through integration rather than any force, it didn't disappear when political conditions changed. Instead, it continued through coexistence, education, and cultural participations. This present day reality directly reflects the historical processes we see on the Malabar coast. Finally, when we briefly compared this to regions like Andhra or Pala Bengal under Mahipala, we see a contrast. Those regions did not experience early Arab merchant settlements in the same way. Islam arrived there later and through different mechanisms. This comparison highlights how geography, trading routes, and social interactions shape different paths of religious spread. To overall conclude, the Malabar Coast is one of the strongest historic examples of peaceful religious globalization. Through Indian Ocean trade, Arab diaspora settlements, and Sufi spiritual networks, Islam became deeply rooted without any conquest. This case helps us to understand how Islam grew into a global religion across cultures and continents, not through any domination but through connection. That would be all from my end. Thank you very much.
Everyone, this is Farah Tabassum. I will talk about how Islam spread along the Swahili coast of East Africa and how trade, power, and culture worked together for this development. The Swahili coast was connected through Indian Ocean trade with countries like Arabia, Persia, and India. As traders came and went, Islam spread slowly through daily contact, trading, and community life. If we look into the early Islamic period, the colonial period, and the modern period, we can understand how Islam continued to shape Swahili society over time. So, why did Islam spread so successfully along the coast? One key reason was obviously trading. The Swahili coast stretches along present day Kenya, Tanzania, and Mozambique. Even before Europeans arrived, it was part of a long distance trade network. From the 8th century, Arab, Persian, and Indian merchants visited coastal cities like Kilwa, Mombasa, Lamu, and Zanzibar. They traded goods like gold, ivory, and African slaves. Mack explains that these trade spread not just goods but it was culture and religion. Horton and Middleton added that Islam arrived gradually through social contact and daily life, not by force. So, archaeological evidence like Kisimkazi Mosque in Zanzibar, we can see it here. It has a Kufic inscription which was done in 1107 CE. It shows that Islam was adopted early by both elites and local people. Trade created wealth and conversions gave rulers legitimacy while connecting them to Muslim merchants' network. However, Islam spread mainly in coastal cities because it was closely tied to trade and politics. Local rulers adopted Islam to gain trust in trade networks and strengthen authority. Conversion by elites turned Islam into a symbol of leadership and social status. Mosque were not only places of worship, they also symbolized political power. For example, the Great Mosque of Kilwa, which is this mosque we can see, it reflected both religious devotion and wealth. Shared Islamic practices increased trust among merchants, making trading better. In this way, Islam linked faith, commerce, and governance, showing how religion could operate as social institution. Furthermore, Islam on the Swahili coast blended with local African cultures. Powell explains that Swahili language mixed Bantu grammar with Arabic words, while architecture, poetry, and dresses reflected both African and Islamic tradition. Mixed marriages created distinct Swahili Muslim identity. So eventually, Islam became a part of daily life, communities, and regulating moral behavior and guiding education. However, traders introduced Islam to elites through commerce and trading, but Sufi missionaries helped it to reach ordinary peoples. Sufi focused on moral teaching, spirituality, and community life. They established mosques, schools, and teaching centers. Their approach was peaceful and open to all, which made Islam more accessible and strengthened its social influence. If we look at the colonial period, the Portuguese and later the British tried to control trade and weaken local Muslim rulers. According to Abdul Qadir, they even attempted to dominate courts and schools. This disrupted trade and weakened local Muslim rulers. Even though Islam lost some political power, it remained strong at the community level. According to Mac, leaders in Zanzibar negotiated to maintain courts and education. So, why was Islam able to survive under colonial pressure? Because it was flexible. Even without formal political power, it maintained moral authority and social cohesion, allowing communities to resist full colonial control while staying engaged in trade networks. Today, Swahili Coast is a part of independent countries like Kenya and Tanzania. Besides, Islam continues to shape identity, culture, and daily life in cities um, such as Zanzibar, uh, Lamu, and Mombasa. Powell explained global influences like migration, media, education, and new Islamic movements sometimes challenges these traditional Sufi practices. Yet mosque, school, and community organizations still guide moral behavior and social interaction. Many communities turn to Islam to protect tradition and social norms. Even today, Islam adapts to global changes while maintaining Swahili identity. So overall, the spread of Islam along the Swahili coast was shaped by trade, politics, and culture. Trade introduced Islam, elite adoption gave it authority, and Sufi missionaries merged it into society. Even under colonial rule, Islam maintained social influence, guided community life. Islam was not just a faith, it was a social and political institution that adapted across eras, preserving identity, cohesion, and authority. That's all for me.
Hello everyone. So my poster is titled "The Silk Road Nexus." So let's start with the first argument. So my central argument is that Islam did not spread in Punjab through a single conquest, but it was a long historical process involving trade, network, Sufi spirituality, and later political institutions. Because Punjab sat At the crossroads of Central Asia and the Indian subcontinent, it became a key region where Islam evolved from a merchant faith it into a deeply rooted social and political system. I'll start with the left side of the poster here, the commerce, the merchant phase. So the Silk routes were not one road but a network. By the 9th century, under the Abbasid Caliphate, Muslim merchants were traveling through these routes, bringing not only goods like silk and spices but also Islamic legal practices, contracts, and ethical norms. Cities like Multan became a major trading hubs. So, according to UNESCO, and merchants often converted to Islam because it gave them access to global commercial network, shared laws, and trust across these long distances of the Silk Road. This phase shows that early Islam spread peacefully through economic incentives and social mobility, and not force. Moving to the right side, we have the second pillar, which is spirituality. Sufi saints played a crucial role in making Islam locally meaningful. Orders like the Shurawardi, led by figures such as Shaikh Baha al-Din Zakaria of Multan, preached Islam using local languages, poetry, and service rather than elite court cultures. Um, this is why we see cultural synthesis uh, in Punjab, such as the Qawwali music, Tandoori cuisine, and Persian style charbagh gardens. Um, this phase is also important because it explains why Islam became deeply rooted and not just adopted. The third pillar is political power, shown on the here on the right lower side, the poster. From the Ghaznavids to Delhi Sultanate, and especially under the Mughal Empire, Islam became institutionalized. Um, Lahore emerged as a political and administrative center. Um, as Peter Frankopant, in his write-up of the Silk Roads book, he argued that control of Silk Roads brought immense wealth and legitimacy to empires. Mughal architecture, madrasas, and court culture reflected Islam's shift from shrines and marketplaces into state power. However, this also reduced the early or flexibility of Islam that existed under trade and Sufism. Now, we see the bottom timeline of transformation from the 9th century to the modern times. So, let's start uh, with here. The 1947 partition violently divided Punjab along religious lines, transforming a historically connected region into a borderland. Over 10 million people were displaced. Regions like Kashmir, once part of Silk Road networks, became militarized borders. Even modern projects like the CPEC, often called the New Silk Road, revived trade but not the cultural openness that was in the past. This contrast shows how Islam once spread through interaction and exchange, whereas today it is often shaped by nation states and the rigid, strict borders. So, to conclude, the spread of Islam in Punjab was a centuries long synthesis shaped by merchants, mystics, and rulers. Trade introduced Islam, Sufism localized it, and politics institutionalized it. So, understanding this layered history helps us see that religious identity in the past was fluid and cosmopolitan, not fixed. Um, So, this whole historical perspective is essential for the understanding of modern conflicts and imagining coexistence in the South Asian history today. Thank you. This was my part.